Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Arna Sahu, host of Arna's News, where on this podcast channel, I aim to eliminate the gender gap in the STEM fields by featuring inspiring female professionals and highlighting their stories and accomplishments to further encourage girls. Today on episode 30.
But I'm going to wait for somebody to tell me that I didn't do it well, right? Somebody can give me the feedback. Somebody can say, hey, this could be better. Or I have my code out. Somebody can come and say, hey, fix this thing in the code. And that's okay because we're not perfect. But it was exhausting to be questioning myself whether I can do it. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to tell myself now that I was like, 30 years old or something. It's like, okay, I'm going to tell myself that I can do it and wait somebody else to tell me that I can't do it. And I'm still waiting. So, again, on a daily basis, there's all kinds of things that I can't do. But overall, I think it's a more fun way to approach your career with just the whatever self-questioning you can remove. It'll do you well. So if you can't tell yourself that you can do it, I will tell you that you can do it.
Today on episode 30, I am pleased to announce our guest, Maria Kazandjieva. As a highly accomplished professional in the technology and STEM industry, she currently serves as the co-founder of Graft, a cutting-edge cloud-native platform that allows individuals to utilize the most advanced AI techniques with ease, as well as being a former director of engineering at Netflix. She has demonstrated her exceptional abilities and talents time and time again. Awarded a Technical and Engineering Emmy from Netflix for her role in the standardization of HTML5 video, she's also an avid advocate of women in STEM, inspiring and encouraging women in technology to reach their full potential.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. Honestly, it's so much fun to be on a podcast like that, and certainly something I wish I had when I was in high school. So I hope we have a good conversation. I think you did a great job introducing me. I can also share that it's a lovely Thursday evening when we're recording this here in Menlo Park, and the sun has returned to the Bay Area. So I hope wherever people are listening to, they're enjoying their February.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, so my first question for you is, tell us a bit about your career path.
You touched a bit on my time at Netflix and now at Graft as a co-founder and engineering leader, but I thought I'd go back a little bit in time, and I thought to myself, how did I end up here? And really, I enjoyed math and science and puzzles when I was in high school. And I think it wasn't specifically computer science that I was in love with, but just with the idea of having problems that needed answers, and you had to work a little bit hard to get to the answer. So that's how I ended up doing computer science. I did a bunch of chemistry, but I don't know. Chemistry felt a little bit easier, honestly. I don't think it is, but at the time it felt a little bit easier. And my thought process was that I should do something that I'm okay at, but I can be even better. And that's how I got into computer science. I wanted to work hard at it and actually have a good challenge, right? I got my bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, all in computer science. So clearly a one-track mind. And I did a bunch of computer networking when I was in grad school at Stanford, kind of studying how the internet works, studying wireless networking. It was a lot of fun. And the way I ended up at Netflix, I find is very interesting because I didn't know anything about video streaming when I started interviewing at Netflix. And that's not to say that I don't know a lot about video streaming now after so many years, but it was really about finding a company where my knowledge of networking, computer networking, was valuable, while I could also gain some new knowledge around video streaming. And it was a really good reminder for me that you don't have to have perfect knowledge of everything before you try out for an opportunity. Part of the opportunity so that you can continue learning. So I ended up at Netflix after graduate school. Loved it, still miss it to this day. Amazing place to work at, still keep up with a lot of people. But a couple of years ago, almost 2 years ago, I decided it was time to learn again, right? And there was a ton of stuff still going on at Netflix. It was super interesting, but I thought to myself, let's do something completely different. I've always loved data, and so let's learn a little bit about AI. And I reconnected with a friend of mine from grad school and ended up joining Graft as a co-founder and have been doing a ton of different things since then.
That is so cool. I love how you always fostered your curiosity. That's something that's very inspiring. And also on a side note, we're actually twinning, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours? And do you have any tips to succeed?
Two things that I hope are complementary. The first one, broadly about tech, is that people should remember that tech, programming, software engineering, it's a skill. It's a skill. It's not an easy skill, but it's a skill like a lot of other skills, and it's learnable. If you practice, if you keep at it, it is not a dark magic of some sort where you're either born knowing how to code or you don't know how to code, right? Everybody's born not knowing how to code. It's a skill that you learn, just like you learn a language, right? There's a reason they're called programming languages. I was not born knowing how to speak English. In fact, I was not born how to speak Bulgarian either, even though I'm native, right? I learned how to speak my own native language of Bulgaria, and I also learned how to speak English. I also learned how to code. So having that grounding thought that is okay if you're not immediately naturally good at it and there is no magic and it's a skill and practice, I find empowering, because then I know if I persevere and I work hard, I can get better. The other half of that is be comfortable learning and realizing that you're not always going to know everything. That's pretty much true about all of life, I think. But it's another thing that can keep somebody going and keep you comfortable when you don't know the answer. And I touched upon this when I was talking about how I ended up in this career. I liked not knowing. There's something exciting about not knowing. I always loved reading mystery novels as well. So clearly something about me likes a good mystery. And approaching career transitions, approaching a new programming language, approaching a new technical topic, all of that, if you approach it with this idea that it's a mystery and you have the capability to learn, and it's okay if you haven't figured it all out, I think makes for a much more fun journey. And it actually empowers you, and at least me, empowers me and energizes me to seek these new challenges and not shut down and count myself out because I'm scared. That the whole idea is that it's new and it's an adventure and it's a mystery and you get to experience it, and that can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting, because there's this one quote by Theodore Roosevelt that when you think about it and you want to do it, you're already 50% done with the job. So I think it's very important to know that it's okay to not know everything and to get into something where it's unknown to you, because that can actually be pretty exciting.
In fact, I would say, I love this quote, because I would say the things that I sometimes don't enjoy is where when I think about it, I already know exactly how to do it. And then by the time I get to doing it, it feels a little bit boring because it feels you've already done it in your head. So it's kind of nice that, yeah, you can think about it. You have an idea of roughly how you're going to do it. That's the 50%. And then doing it is the other 50%. And that's just as much fun.
Yeah, that is very, very true. Okay, so what is a common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
I thought about this question for a bit, mostly because I had to ask myself what my profession was. There's a lot of so many people out there that can talk about tech broadly. I think there's some standard things around, you either can do it or you can't do it. Not true. It's a skill. You can learn it. There's a lot of myths around, oh, it's a solitary activity. Gosh, so not true. I mean, my Zoom and my Slack are going all the time, right? Nobody, yeah, there are moments that you're working on your own, but I mean, that's true for any job, but most of the time you're collaborating with other people. That's kind of a standard one. But probably the one that I really wanted to mention in terms of my profession is with this new lens of being at a startup, right? So it's a bit more specific. It's not just tech in general as a profession, but going from maybe a kind of a bigger company to a startup. And I think that what I wanted to say to anyone who's listening to your podcast is, don't get tricked into thinking that startups are particularly special or cool, or that the people at startups are particularly special or cool or different. Startups are very cool. I think tech is cool in general. Of course, we're special, but everybody's special. I think it's a different job. It has different challenges. Sometimes it's a bit more challenging, for example, compared to my time at Netflix. But it is not this other thing that other people do, but you can't do. And I say this, maybe it sounds a little bit abstract, but I say this because I definitely, when I was younger, I would look at people, especially in Silicon Valley, doing startups, and it was always, oh, those people, and then there's me. And now I'm one of those people. So I'm just like, no, you know what? Yeah, they're super smart and they're super cool, but they're people like the rest of us, and they do a different job. Just like I have friends who are not in tech at all, and I think they're super cool and special because they do a different job and have chosen to do things that are hard in different ways and interesting in different ways. And so the myth, if anybody has that myth specifically for living the startup life, is that yes, it is a different job, but all jobs are different, and it is not something out there in the abstract that other people do, but you too can be one of those people and go on that adventure.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back with your previous answer, but I feel like wanting to know more, even though it might be unknown to you, is pretty cool and important. And I feel like we should always think about that as a possibility instead of just not doing it and possibly
Agreed.
regretting it. Yeah. Okay. So if you could step into my shoes or your younger self, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
I asked myself this many times. Is school preparing me for the jobs that I want to have? Which I promise is not a selected answer just because of perhaps your audience. I think that was a question on my mind through many different stages of my life, not my career necessarily, but my life, because I did so much schooling. I was in school until I was 28. Exactly. No, 27 perhaps, right? Because my PhD took 6 years, and that was after 4 years of college. So I was, so 18 plus 10 years, 28. There you go. So, and I know the shock and awe. So I was in school for so many years that I constantly ask myself this question in the back of my mind: is school preparing me? And I think, if I may answer my own question, I think it took me a while to figure out that the answer was yes, because the answer was not the obvious yes. Especially if I think back to high school and stuff like that, it's not necessarily that I remember every single detail from geography class and history class, but it prepared me to be curious, to know the landscape of all different areas of study, of science, of problems of society. And it taught me how to learn. And without sounding like too much of a broken record, but there's a bit of a theme to perhaps my answers, that's what the biggest value to me was. It wasn't specific factoids, even though they're helpful, especially as you specialize in your studies, but it was knowing how to learn, knowing how to absorb information, knowing how to have a discussion, knowing how to learn a bunch of things, and understanding how they connect, because you're hearing a little bit about, I don't know, a little bit about something in physics class, and then a little bit of chemistry, and you're like, oh, wait, they're kind of very much related, right? So I think sometimes, we're humans, sometimes we're tired, we don't want to study or do whatever our task is. But every time I've looked back to a previous stage of my life, it's like, oh man, I can do this now because I learned these skills and this information when I was studying. So that was the question. Is school actually useful to prepare us for jobs in the real world? And I think you can make it very, very useful, not just factoids, but also skills around learning and absorbing information, which in this day and age is critical.
Yeah, I mean, when you said that you were in school for like 10 years, my jaw dropped.
My own jaw drops to this day. I don't know how I made it through, but at the end of the day, they let me go. They gave me the PhD and they said, off you go now, enough schooling.
Yeah, I didn't know doing a PhD took 6 years.
Yeah, Yeah, it teaches you things in terms of learning. You don't just learn technology and computer science. It teaches you perseverance, which honestly is perhaps the most important skill in life.
But yes, I do agree with what you said that school does help. Even though, your factoring problem might not, make sense to you, it's just the skills you apply, problem solving in math, being able to express yourself in art or writing, and being able to memorize things in history. Those skills can be applied to the real world. And I feel like if we're more aware of that, then maybe we might actually enjoy school.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the best resources / books that have helped you find your career path?
I really had to limit myself on this one because I love books. When we met originally, I probably mentioned it. I love reading. I wish I could probably read full time, but then I probably wouldn't love it as much. So I thought about this and I picked two things, specific things, and I'll say this. I think there's so many books around kind of leadership, engineering. Obviously, there's technical books. I think that's a well explored area. So I tried to pick two things that have stood the test of time in my own life. The first one is a book called You Are Not Listening by Kate Murphy, which is a little bit ironic because it's a podcast. So I hope people are listening. But it's a book about listening and active listening being a real skill. And I have found over and over again that in many discussions, in meetings, and in work situations, the value that I have added and the reason I have been effective and helpful is not so much because I immediately had the best idea, but because I truly listened to what people are saying, why they're saying it, how to connect ideas. If two people are talking about the same thing, but they don't realize they're talking about the same thing, but I identify that it's the same thing, I can say, hey, actually, we're talking about the same thing, we're agreeing. So and I read this book a long time ago, and it has really stayed with me. You're Not Listening. And the other thing I picked is, it's a Coursera class, and now, in fact, I think they have a book. When I was looking up the name, to fact check it, I think they have a book that's also geared towards teens. It's a course called Learning How to Learn. And yes, you can tell I'm really on message about learning today. It's called Learning How to Learn. It's a Coursera class by Barbara Oakley, who is actually a professor in Oakland. And I think they have at least one or more books. And it's this combination of, it's targeted towards, I think, first-year college students, but I watched this course maybe 2 years ago, so I think everybody should watch it. It is this combination of understanding how to be better at learning, what are the techniques to help you learn, mixed in with neuroscience so that you can actually learn a little bit about how your brain works, how it processes information, and when you're procrastinating or when you want to stop working, it's not that you're lazy, right? It's things are going in your brain. It's either depleted its resources and you need a snack, or you're procrastinating because your brain is trying to avoid ambiguity. So it was just really like a science-backed course, essentially, to make you a more effective learner. So Learning How to Learn, again, it's been a few years and it has stood at least the test of my time.
I will definitely look at those resources. They seem really interesting, especially the title. I know a lot of people say don't judge a book by its cover, but that title really stuck out to me, so I will definitely look at it. So, listeners, if you're listening, make sure to check it out too. Okay, and what do you think is the vital factor that shaped your career, and what was your life before learning it, and what was your life after learning it?
It's related to curiosity. I think it's probably curiosity, but asking questions, which is what you're doing. So you're already ahead of me, because I was not asking that many questions when I was younger. But I got to the point where I was only half jokingly telling people, if I meet somebody when I was at Netflix, and I meet somebody at a conference or an event, and they say, oh, what do you do at Netflix? And I would say, oh, I just go around and I ask questions. And, people would laugh, of course. But it was really maybe, I don't know, 10% joke, really 0% joke, just delivered maybe in a intentionally abstract way. But I have found that it's like a superpower. I feel like it's a superpower to me. I'm a relatively smart person, but I'm not a genius or anything. But being able to listen and then based on that ask questions it's a multiplier, right? Because if 5 people in a group are having a discussion, and if something's off about that discussion, maybe they've actually misunderstood the problem, and now there's a discussion going on, but they're not really talking about the thing that they should be talking about. If you're the person who says, hey, sorry to interrupt, just want to double check that the discussion we're having is still connected to that original problem, or are you trying to solve something else now? Now you've helped set 5 people on the right path, right? If they were veering off. The other example that I want to mention in terms of asking questions, because honestly, everybody should be doing this. If you're in a situation where something's being discussed, something's being presented, and you're confused, just ask a question. Because the number of times that I have said, hey, I don't think I am following this, or I'm not sure I know what you mean, which I guess is not a question, but you can phrase it as a question. And 6 other people in the room nod their heads because they were also lost, right? The number of times that this happens in life, in all kinds of situations, is, it's kind of hilarious. And there's this fear of being the person that is going to say, I don't understand. But if you don't understand, chances are somebody else doesn't understand. Chances are that maybe the speaker didn't understand either, and that's why their explanation is confusing, right? And so asking questions is so underrated, and it's very easy, especially when you have a job, to say, oh, I hate meetings or whatever. But like, meetings are just discussions, and if you listen carefully, if you engage and you ask the right questions, you can really help drive forward whatever project's being worked on, whatever product. And it's also fun, and I guess gets back to that Maria loves mysteries. And if I'm in a mystery novel and I'm a sleuth trying to solve a murder, I would have to go around and ask people questions, and that's how you learn your information. So clearly I'm on brand today, and I would say the superpower is asking more pointed questions that will result not only in you getting an answer back, but the other person thinking, oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, that's a good point. We need to rethink that. So you're promoting additional thought in everybody else who heard your question.
Yeah, I think Maria loves mystery is a new motto that we should go by.
Gosh, I do love them.
I think that's very true. But I also do agree with the questions, because so many times, which is kind of weird, whenever I have like a math test or something, a few days when I ask the question, that question is on the test. And I'm literally grateful that I asked that question. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known what would happen. And just asking questions in general just boosts your self-confidence so much, because you're just not under the roof anymore and you really understand what's happening.
And it boosts your learning, because it's one of the ways, it's another way for your brain to approach the information that you're absorbing or that you're creating, where it's not just discussion based, but you're now trying to poke holes. So I try to imagine sometimes that, the neural network in my brain, it's like by asking the question, I'm taking a slightly different path and maybe solidifying and thickening some extra, connections in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, whenever some new information is presented to me in science, I always try to find loopholes so I can like block out those loopholes. And then on the test, I'm just like, I get the answer and that's it.
If you like loopholes, you're hired. You can be part of my mystery solving team. I could use you.
All right, I will take up that offer. Okay, so since we have some extra time, what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
I have a note on this, and I'll just read it verbatim. That I can do it, smiley face. And you know what? I really do. I think everybody along the way, as we're learning, and as you said, we gain more confidence and we explore more things. There's less and less self-doubt, and as you have a longer career, you ideally have less self-doubt, but we all have that self-doubt. And I think especially as women, a lot of times, if we're underrepresented, if we're in a field where perhaps we haven't always felt welcome. It's very easy to absorb that stuff and to feel like you can't do it simply because of who you are. And there are unfortunately people out there that will try to make you feel that way before they've even met you, essentially, right? They've already thought that, oh, this person can do it. And so it's something that many women in tech learn almost by just perseverance, that every time when they question themselves or somebody else questioned them unfairly, by succeeding, it gives them another data point that they can do it. And so I kind of wish that there was a way to convince myself earlier on that I can do it, whatever it is, right? Whatever you want to put your mind to. That doesn't mean that out of 100 things that you try, you're going to be successful 100% of the time. But again, welcome to life. Nobody's successful 100% of the time. But I reached a point a couple of years into Netflix where I was just like, you know what? Maybe there's some things I can do, or maybe there's some things I didn't do very well, but I'm going to wait for somebody to tell me that I didn't do it well, right? Somebody could give me the feedback. Somebody can say, hey, this could be better. Or I have my code out. Somebody can come and say, hey, fix this thing in the code. And that's okay because we're not perfect. But it was exhausting to be questioning myself whether I can do it. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to tell myself, now that I was like, I don't know, 30 years old or something. I was like, okay, I'm going to tell myself that I can do it, and wait somebody else to tell me that I can't do it. And I'm still waiting. So, again, on a daily basis, there's all kinds of things that I can't do. But overall, I think it's a more fun way to approach your career, with just the whatever self-questioning you can remove. It'll do you well. So if you can't tell yourself that you can do it, I will tell you that you can do it. I promise.
Yeah, I think that having a growth mindset is very, very important, because coming from my perspective, I don't know what it was, but before quarantine, I used to hate school. Like, I don't know what it was. And then after quarantine, I decided to, you know what, I'll take the 2-week break off and just like do things that I love. And then from there on, I've like loved school in some sense. So I don't know, maybe it was just a mindset.
It turns out you can do it.
Yeah, I can. Okay, and how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things within your role?
Oh gosh, there's so much to learn all the time in life, in a technical job. At a startup, it's a whole other level that I expected and I really enjoy, but sometimes it's mind-blowing, because I would go from a conversation with a lawyer to a recruiting conversation with somebody that I've just met for the first time, to a technical conversation, to maybe like a one-on-one personal conversation with somebody on the team. And there's all these other facets of beyond the technical part. So much learning. But I thought I wanted to give something that maybe it's broadly applicable. And I would say, because there's so much out there, I try to be thoughtful around identifying the things that I need to learn, and identifying the level of detail or mastery to which I have to learn them, because there just is not a lot of time, right? PhD is one thing, could go very deep into one field, right? But I think in kind of a job, it's different. There's a lot of things coming your way. There's a lot of tasks coming your way. And so it's important to be selective and strategize a little bit and be thoughtful about what you're learning, to what level and when, so that you can plan. And there just isn't enough time for me to learn. There's tech news. I mean, you could do nothing else but read tech news all day long, or tech papers, right? Computer science papers. So that's not possible. So figuring out the level of detail of learning, which basically means understanding the motivation behind the learning. Why am I learning this task? Like, how good does it actually have to be? Because that's one of the things that's different from when I was in school. It's like, I'm in school, there's a test. I know that I can get 100% of it correctly, and that's going to feel really nice. And I'll try to get it. Not always, especially some disciplines. But math, right? I was always like, oh, if I'm one question off, I was like, no, right? But if you have a job, there's just the things that need to get done, and they all have to be done well, but they have to be done well enough. And there's some cases where it's similarly getting a job done or learning something. If you learn 80% of it, that's actually good enough, and you can save yourself that 20% for something else. And there's some things that you have to be, very, very good at and continue growing and learning. So just being thoughtful about how you learn and what you're exposing yourself to, a little bit of Twitter, a little bit of TikTok, a little bit of research paper, and a lot of going to the library and reading books.
Yeah. I think that managing your time effectively is very important because everybody only has 24 hours in a day. And 8 of those hours should be gone to sleeping. So
I love sleeping, and I don't know who's going to listen to this podcast. They're probably going to think I'm making this up because usually people in startups don't talk about sleeping, but I can't. I'm a terrible person if I don't sleep. And I also just respect the fact that my brain is a physical thing that literally needs that time in order to recover. And I know how much faster and sharper and better I can be if I've slept. So 8 hours, unless the cats want to be fed extra early. So maybe 7.5.
all right. And last but not least, do you have any quotes or mottos that you love to follow besides Maria loves mystery?
Besides, gosh, that's going to be my sign off. Two things, and they're not really quotes, I guess, just maybe phrases that I go back to and I tend to share with people. One of them, I believe somebody said this, but maybe not in these exact words. So I'm not going to claim that I invented this, but respect without deference. It's a clunky phrase. So if somebody has a better one, find me on LinkedIn and tell me. But it really gets at this idea that has been pointed out to me many times about my personality, which is that I respect people. As I'm talking to you, I respect what you're doing tremendously, right? If I'm talking to the CEO of Netflix, I respect him tremendously as well. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to default to acting in deference, where I'm going to defer to you and not share my ideas and not engage in a conversation with you as a peer. And so I think that difference between being respectful but still being an active participant in a discussion where you respect yourself as well is very important, because there's always people that are smarter than me that I'm talking to, or there's always people at a larger corporation that have a bigger title than you because they are more experienced, they're smarter, whatever. And so being able to still hold your ground and feel empowered to contribute to work, to contribute to conversations where you're still respecting the other person, but you're still comfortable challenging them or saying, oh, I'm not really sure if that's right. Right? You have to respect their expertise. Sometimes they know a lot more about a topic than you, but don't over respect to the point where you're not actually contributing, because then you're not respecting yourself, I think. So respect without deference is the first one that I think about often. And I think a lot of people think about me that I show respect without deference, for better or for worse, right? I think for better. And the other one, honestly, I looked at my laptop. My laptop only has one sticker because now I work from home, so nobody sees the laptop anyway. But I have a sticker of the parachute design for the Perseverance Mars rover, which I don't know how long it's been. Definitely more than a year. So the parachute design was these sectors of white and red. And of course, the rover itself was called Perseverance. So that's a word that I think about frequently. But NASA had actually encoded a message into the visual design of the parachute. And it said, "Dare mighty things." And so I got this sticker, and it's the parachute. It's a circular sticker. It's a parachute design. And on the top, it says Perseverance. On the bottom, it says "Dare mighty things," which sometimes you need an external source to tell you to dare mighty things.
Yeah, I will definitely take those two phrases to heart, and I will look up that sticker because that looks really interesting. But before we end off, would you like to say any last words to the audience?
Any last words to the audience? I am thrilled that I get to be on this podcast. I think the one thing I want to tell people, and I've said this in the past as well, is it's easy to come on a podcast and as the guest think that you are the one delivering the inspirational messages. But honestly, it goes both ways, because knowing that there are people after me, and especially women who are interested in STEM, who are listening to the podcast, gosh, who are creating podcasts like this, I find that inspirational. And I think at the end of the day, maybe this goes to the respect without deference. Just because maybe I've had a longer career than somebody who's younger than me, I mean, they can't help when they were born, right? It doesn't mean that I am more special than them or that I am more inspiring than them. And people who are coming after me and going through school and doing computer science and doing tech and engaging and having these conversations about women in STEM inspires me to be in the field. So really what I want to say is thank you to the listeners for inspiring me.
Thank you for tuning in to Arnis News, where we aim to inspire and empower women in STEM by featuring stories of successful female professionals in the industry. Today, we had the pleasure of speaking with Maria Kazandjieva, co-founder of Graft and former director of engineering at Netflix, who shared her experiences and insights into the world of technology and AI. Her story is a testament to the endless possibilities for women in the field of technology, and we hope that her journey will inspire and encourage others to pursue their dreams. Thus, that concludes episode 30. If you want to know more about how I relate to these amazing topics, then stay tuned for upcoming episodes. A free way to support this show is by leaving it a 5-star rating and a review on the player you are listening to. Let me know what you enjoy about this podcast, as it's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Also, check out our YouTube channel. That is www.youtube.com/@arnisnews. No spaces attached. Once again, thank you for finding me, and I hope we stay in touch with each other. Dito, you're listening to Arna Sahu, the host of Arnis News. Toodles!